If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard in Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. All right, everybody, welcome to PWZ. This is Rick Del Santo. Thank you for joining us. I have a very special guest that has not been here in over a year. Last time you were here, it was for WrestleMania 36. We talked about that, and I was just kind of getting traction with the show, and now you're back. Thank you very much for joining me. One of my oldest friends for the last 30 years, John. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, Rick? It's good being here again, talking to you.
Well, I'm glad to have you back and talking wrestling. I mean, we've been wrestling buddies for the last 30... Well, not wrestling buddies. Not like...
I think since... actually, you want to tell people, the first time I met you, we were working, and you saw I was wearing a Minor Threat shirt, and you're like,
yes.
Oh, I like Minor... Do you remember that? Then we started talking.
Right.
Do you remember
the
that?
two
Then
things
we
that
started
brought us
talking,
together.
and we both... Yes, and you're like, talking about wrestling, and...
Yep.
Rick was amazed. I'm one of the only people he knew that watched something in Connecticut other than WWF. That was unheard of. Not just watch it, actually followed it.
Yes, that was, I think one of the things that we had in common, I don't think at first we really talked much AWA, but we definitely talked 80s NWA a ton. And then we, gradually got into talking AWA and World Class and such.
And then with AWA, then I showed Rick, I said, oh, Rick, I still have all my AWA action figures from when I was a kid. And I showed it to him.
That was
like,
amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I remember because I never owned those figures. I mean, I had a few, but I never got hardcore into collecting it. And I think I actually took your old ring, I believe it or not, when many years ago. Yeah, and I ended up repairing it, but now I wish I still had that because, it goes for quite a bit of money. So let me ask you, considering that we are in Connecticut, not in the Midwest, how did you discover the AWA?
I think I just flipped around and saw it on ESPN one night. I remember the first memory I had was seeing Sergeant Slaughter on there, and I couldn't believe, oh wow, just to watch. I remember when I was a kid, the big deal at the time. I mean, he was big in the WWF, growing up, and the big deal when I was a kid was Sergeant Slaughter versus Iron Sheik in the boot camp match. And then do you remember that? And then he just kind of disappeared, and I kind of didn't know what happened after a while. And then I'm like, oh, I was all excited. I saw him again. And then he did that whole deal with Hasbro and G.I. Joe, things like that. So that's the first time I ever saw it. So that was in '85 then, probably, in that time period. The first time I saw, the AWA.
That's about when I actually discovered professional wrestling. Maybe a year before that, because I remember living in Brantford, and we lived in a two-family house, and I don't think I discovered anything outside of WWF for another 2 years. But I remember the first thing I discovered, my cousin was watching it, because we had a two-family house, he lived on the second floor, we lived on the first, Roddy Piper was on. And I don't even know, I think one day, when I came home, I discovered World Class, and there was some sort of relationship between World Class and the AWA where there was intermingling of talent. And so they were both on ESPN, AWA and World Class. So that's eventually how I got into it. And it was just like this whole other world between reading magazines and there was these wrestlers that I read about in PWI and Wrestling World and all these other things that were not on my WWF TV on Saturday morning. So it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, because I think World Class, they started originally going on in 1986. And then years later, whatever, in 88 or whatever, whenever they demised, or even before that, maybe they started playing all the old episodes, right? The classics on ESPN, at 4 o'clock. I remember after school, I'd come home and they'd play all the old...
Oh, I rushed home, and I made sure that... I wasn't doing my homework until after World Class. It was the Legends of World Class Championship Wrestling at 4:00 every day. Yep.
Yeah. So this
Yep.
is So when I first started watching AWA, also right after they had roller derby right after on
Okay.
ESPN, and I never
Well,
knew
this was
roller derby
okay.
existed until I saw that, and then at one point they had PKA karate, kickboxing. I don't know if you ever saw that.
I
Professional
did. Yep.
Karate Association. Yeah, so that was another. So they had to have, something, a tie-in that was like a similar combat sport thing on ESPN, when they had AWA.
It's similar. It's funny that you said that because it's similar to like when Sports Channel would always run the Fist and Fury with Herb Abrams UWF. They ran. It's
Yeah,
funny to
they
think
have
about
to
how,
have it. They have to
but then they
keep it
had
watching, so they have to have
yeah,
something similar.
yeah, they have boxing and then they had the kickboxing as well later on. I kind of enjoyed the kickboxing, but it was kind of a different sport at that time period. They were still wearing knee pads or like shin guards and stuff like that, and the
Yeah, they're
headgears
wearing
prior to.
they're wearing like the the pads on both. Yeah, like the gloves weren't
Right.
normal boxing gloves. They're like smaller, much
Yep.
smaller, and then they have the pads. Yeah, like the shin guards or whatever. Yeah, it's funny. I haven't thought about that in years.
I'm sure we could find a lot of that on YouTube. It was always fun to come across, and that glow and all that other weird stuff
Oh
that we
yeah,
watched. So we are going to be talking about, excuse me, an AWA program, a classic AWA program, because I don't know. It's been something I've been really into lately. I don't know why. It's like I'm rediscovering a lot of those older AWA videos, basically on YouTube. And the funny part is sometimes I go back and watch these stuff from 1989 and 1990, the stuff that is basically put the company out of business. And some of it's like they didn't even have a live crowd in attendance for that. They just ended up doing it in an empty studio, especially towards the last few episodes. You can see a young Jerry Lynn in some of those episodes and some
did I
other
ever tell
guys.
you when we met Jerry Lynn and I brought up, say, oh, I remember you in AWA, and he like didn't even want to talk about that, like almost like he was like embarrassed, but he didn't mind talking about the GWF stuff. But when I brought up AWA, it's like he wanted to change the subject. Like,
Probably didn't get paid. Vern probably didn't
yeah,
pay him for TV. They didn't pay the enhancement talent at that time.
yeah.
Maybe they were lucky to get exposure, and they were on ESPN. So, all right. So we're going to be talking about AWA program from September 3rd, 1985. They got these. This intro is classic because this is the one that was like on ESPN and Championship Wrestling. The music and the I didn't know that they used it
Big
that early
logo,
back.
two guys wrestling, the red, white, and
Yeah,
blue. And then they
yeah.
go inside the ring.
AWA Championship Wrestling. The AWA presents the greatest stars in professional wrestling, bringing you the best in mat action.
It's like the best graphic they actually have, and the rest looks like it's made like public access, right? Well, everything else.
Well, I think that McMahon was doing stuff way ahead of his time, at that time period as far as graphics go. And AWA, like you said, it was just very simple public access type things, just like generic lettering right across the screen. So it was kind of enjoyable, kind of funny to watch some of this stuff, but the graphics were really enjoyable. And then Larry Nelson's voice over it describing that you're watching the Major League of Professional Wrestling, and you're going to see the best
Some
in
people
match.
don't like him. I don't know what your opinion is. I like him. I always liked him.
No, I thought he was great, and I don't think he did anything else wrestling related after the AWA. I know he did. Apparently he was the original voice for Tony the Tiger. I found that out.
Is he, or is it Lee Marshall was, right?
Was
Larry...
Lee Marshall? Somebody told me.
But,
maybe it was Lee Marshall. I don't know. Actually, now it makes more sense knowing Lee Marshall's voice. Now that it makes.
I don't know if they had two Tony the Tigers working for the company, right?
No, it wouldn't. But it might. Well, Lee Marshall makes more sense knowing his voice. So,
He
and Lee
definitely
Marshall.
And I know you hate
Well, you
Lee
can always tell us. I used to hate Lee Marshall big time. I used to have to leave the room, but then it's like over time, I kind of got used to him being like, well, he's better than I don't know anybody, any Michael Cole for crying out loud, anybody that's on TV today. And that's not saying much because there's not a lot of really good, talented commentators today.
The other thing about Larry Nelson, I remember when he passed away, I was reading, like Meltzer wrote about him, whenever that was. How many years ago? It's been some time now, right?
It's been at least 10. I don't think it's, around there. Because I did find an interview from not that long ago. So it's been in the last 10 years, I believe.
But the thing I found really fascinating was he was saying people would see him, even when he's not working, and no matter where he went, if he went to some other event or the grocery store, he'd still wear his AWA jacket at all times. I guess he wanted to be recognized. I don't know. I just thought that was pretty crazy.
Just old and crazy?
He was at a basketball game sitting there just wearing his AWA jacket.
That's funny. That sounds like something I would do. But what else was I going to say? I didn't know anything that he did outside of AWA except for maybe a year or so after the AWA went out of business. He was commentating an arm wrestling contest on ESPN randomly one day. So, and then that was the last time I ever heard about him.
Yeah.
So we open up here with I'm getting them too confused. Sorry. Larry Nelson interviewing Nick Bockwinkel. And they're going to talk about later in the show. They're showing Vern Gagne's. I think this is his first retirement match. How many retirement matches is it?
Yeah, this is 1983. This retirement match, correct? And then I guess he comes back again later.
It was 1980. It was 1981, and then I think he returned in 1983, if I remember correctly.
In wrestling,
I actually looked this up.
Retired, right? That's why it gets confusing.
No, not until you die or your business goes out of business. So we started off with, oh man, this is going to be rough talking about this guy. Buck Rock and Roll Zoomhoff against Jim Londos.
This has to be a rib. Jim Londos is like a famous Greek wrestler, like one of the biggest draws ever in professional wrestling. Right. And they have a jobber named Jim Londos. I'm wondering, does Vern have any heat with the real Jim Londos? What is the story right?
The guy died in 1975. I actually looked him up today.
Right. So he was somebody's idea of a joke, right? It has to be.
It had to be because when I heard him say Jim Londos, I went, huh? I was like, there's no way. And it was just and the guy looks like he's about 25 years old at the most. Yeah. So I had to look him up, and it's definitely not him. I didn't realize it was the famous Greek wrestler from the turn of the, at that time period. And so it has to be a joke. And it's I have to say that this actually was quite an enjoyable match. It was actually I didn't realize that, as much as we make fun of Buck Zoomhoff because of his personal issues and him being so damn corny, he was actually pretty good technical wrestler in this match, I thought, against Jim Londos, this young guy.
He wasn't bad, and he's a guy, there's another thing. When I first started talking to you years ago about wrestling, I'd bring up Buck Zoomhoff just because I thought he was hilarious all the time. Do you remember? And then one time I was like, "Oh, Rick, you got to watch Superstars. He's a jobber now." Do you remember that?
I thought it was but
one of the early
it was
90s.
Superstars. I remember because it wasn't. There's a lot of guys that ended up in there as well. Bill Irwin ended up in there too as a jobber. I think he was the Goon, but I think he actually was Bill Irwin at one point in there as well.
Yeah, I got excited seeing Buck Zoomhoff again. But yeah, if you want to look up what Buck did in his personal life, we don't want to discuss it. Yeah, but that's
we're not.
We're just going to focus on the wrestling and nothing else, right?
We might talk shit on this show, but we're not talking about this shit. This is just, yeah.
The whole gimmick is hysterical. It has a boombox. And the whole Elvis jumpsuit.
The whole Elvis outfit. Yeah, but he comes out playing Bob Seger wearing the 70s Elvis jumpsuit. And he keeps saying that he's dedicating his match to all the rock and rollers. And he's going to be a rock and roller and all this other stuff. I'm like, this is just, it's so over the top and corny.
And Now, commentating, Nick Bockwinkel's commentating, and Doug McLeod. Now, if you like, he hasn't really done too much. He's done like stuff. I think in the Minneapolis area. I think that's why they got him actually. But he doesn't really have much wrestling knowledge. Just sports broadcasting knowledge.
Right. I don't really remember much about him. The name seems somewhat familiar, but I don't really remember a whole lot. Especially with this time period.
Capetta, the ring announcer, legendary.
Announcer. The
world's
so most dangerous announcer
in this one episode, right? I mean,
yeah, it is. It definitely is. Because I think did Gary Capetta, he started in the WWF, or did he do anywhere before that?
Maybe, because I think he's from the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
So he's worked everywhere. I mean, literally every big promotion, right? I mean, at the time.
Did I ever tell you the time that he gave me a dirty look? Ever tell you that?
Stole his seat, yes.
I stole
at a Ring of Honor.
At a Ring of Honor show. He was pissed at me. He gave me the nastiest look, and I was like, oh. Gary Michael Capetta. And it was in Larry Nelson. I got it right there.
Rick's favorite referee's working, too, Dick Worley.
Dick Worley, that's right. He is heavily featured in this episode, and I was very excited. I don't know, I did some previews on Instagram today. Did a bunch of screenshots, and Dick Worley, I put a nice picture of him up. He looks like he's falling asleep half the time.
First referee to ever get an action figure made of him, right? So that's a pretty big deal.
That's, in the AWA figure. Yeah. So on top of that, Larry Nelson is backstage interviewing everybody, and he does That's Larry Zbyszko. Larry Zbyszko is normally really good at interviews, and this one is just, they're advertising for, was it Zbyszko's Corner, or in his corner?
The show. And Buck Zumhofe comes out. Doesn't he have his the radio blaring, too, with old-time rock and roll?
And he scares the shit out of Larry Nelson. Did you see that? He's just, it was really funny. But he's got it blasting into Larry Nelson's microphone the whole time as he's trying to talk to him. He's talking about how he's going to come out and go after Mr. Electricity, Steve Regal, and take his junior heavyweight title.
Buckle. That's the quote. The Steve Regal.
He calls it a buckle.
Yes, he wants that buckle.
It was so bizarre sounding. Like, and he was like, how much coke did he do before this interview? Because he was really
today. I mean, you're paying attention to him talking. Right. Unlike today, when if you put Raw on, I'm falling asleep with these promos.
Is a weekly feature right now. That's right. The Rock and Roller.
Next week, right here on ENSP, you're going to see the match that I've been waiting for a long time, baby. And that's you, Steve Regal. That's who it's going to be. Steve Regal stole that title away from me 2 years ago, and I've been chasing him all over the world, baby. And it's coming down next week, right here. You, Steve Regal, and the Rock and Roller, buddy. Take that belt, take that buckle, baby, and polish it up, shine it up, because all the Rock and Rollers stand behind me here, baby. We're gonna take that belt home, brother, and you can make a bet on that right here.
You betcha. Go get him, Rock and Roller.
I was talking about that earlier. It's like I think yesterday, I can't make it through a good, usually I decide if I try to put on Raw, I used to always at least attempt to watch Raw, and in that first 10 minutes I would decide whether I want to keep it on or not, and I can't. It's usually this, because they always, not to get too far away from this, but I'm just gonna say it's like you're paying attention to Buck Zumhofe. It's a nice 2-minute promo basically. With Raw, there's always a wrestler that comes out right off the rip, and it's a 20-minute promo and a setup for the main event or something. Yes, and the thing with this is it's set up like it's a sporting event, and the fact that it's what was I going to say? The promoters are in control of who meets who. There's not just some wrestler that comes out and says, I want a match with you tonight. And they're like, oh, okay. And then that's something that's happened from 99, 98, 99 with the Attitude Era. Any wrestler can say they want a match and then they're on the fucking show. And it's just aggravating. Just this was treated way different. It's presented in a real, a professional wrestling sports type setting.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know if you feel this way too when you watch it. You just pay more attention when you have like a backstage segment, a promo, as opposed into the ring. Like you can focus on it more. You're kind of like distracted by the crowd, or you know what I'm saying? It's just it's another thing. And there's noise. This is just there's no noise, and all you hear is the wrestler and the interviewer, and that's it. You know,
except for old time rock and roll, you can hear that as well.
Yeah. You can't focus.
Yeah. I think we went to a commercial break, right from here. Did you notice that one of the commercials was they were advertising the Slaughter and the LOD shirts?
Oh, and they're from Connecticut, and that's the other thing. From
I was
Connecticut. I was like, oh,
they're in WWF territory.
I used to see that all the time at this one store in North Haven, Connecticut. They sell metal shirts, and I used to look at it like, I want to get that one day, and I never got it.
Right. There used to be a place in the mall that used to sell that kind of stuff. Like they used to do like iron-ons to shirts and stuff like that, and you'd get some really weird metal shirts, and you could rent like a Sergeant Slaughter. And I remember I got a Ricky Steamboat shirt. Probably like there was like a picture. Do you remember when the A-Team and there was like a group of wrestlers that helped them out or something like that? I ended up getting that picture on like it obviously didn't last too long. All right, so what else you got here?
This is Jimmy Garvin. He comes out in his green sequin outfit. with Precious.
Nobody does that anymore. Nobody comes out dressed like that anymore.
Sharp-dressed man, right?
Well, that's the other thing. I noticed this. But the Fantastics were also using this at the same time, weren't they?
I think possibly, yeah.
Because they were, I mean, he worked World Class, I think, around the same time period. I think, was that where he was? Because they kept claiming that he was suspended. Is this during his World Class?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Because he was using that, and then I believe that they were also in there at that same time.
Yeah, so this was, and back then it was normal. There was no copyright issues. You could just call it to any music. Nobody cared back then.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Yeah, that's before they started.
I was a great manager. I don't know what you think. I liked the gimmick of the the hairspray when she'd spray it in people's eyes. Like I thought that was awesome.
So my question is, yeah, it was awesome. Like she just kept spraying it out. She was, and you see Gary Michael Capetta's like, oh God, My other thing with this is like, people were cheering for both Jimmy Garvin and the Blue Max. If you paid close enough attention,
it's one of those things like Jimmy Garvin's a star. It's like right, they're confused. Like, well, he's supposed to be the babyface to Blue Max, right? And then
that's what I was thinking. But he was also like usually like there's this heel masked enhancement talent. But they're both getting cheered, and this was actually, if you look at this was actually a pretty decent, like, this Blue Max character, whoever he was under that mask.
Yeah.
I tried looking it up. He was actually pretty decent when he did, like, the flying head scissors and such.
Yeah, no, he wasn't bad. And this is the first time I ever saw the Brainbuster suplex when I was a kid, and I was, like, amazed by it. When I saw Jimmy Garvin do it, I thought it was a great move.
Well, they call it pile driver here.
Yes, that's the guy. The McLeod guy is saying he doesn't really have any wrestling knowledge. Yes, he called it a pile driver. Yes.
They said that it was lift him up for a suplex and turned it into a pile driver. And I was like, it's a brain buster.
Yeah. And Nick, I think Nick was confused because it's a new move and he didn't know what to call it probably at the time, right?
Right. Nick was pretty old at the time as well.
So he's probably like, yeah, what are these crazy kids doing now?
Nick still had a few years left, right? Didn't he retire? Well, he only retired, 2 years later?
He won the belt, right?
Yeah. I think he won he won at least one more time.
Quarters. Those infamous quarters.
Actually, today's the anniversary of that match. I'm not sure if you saw on Instagram.
Is it really?
May 2nd, 1987 is when Kurt Hennig defeated Nick Bockwinkel to become AWA World Champion.
Awesome.
Yeah. And he's supposed to be the babyface. Actually, that's another one. I'm not really, like, watching it. You can't really tell who the babyface is. And I think Hennig is actually the babyface. Zabisco sitting in the corner.
Right? Once he,
yeah.
Right.
Right, because he did turn heel and he was a heel champion in there. And I thought he was actually a really good AWA champion, but he was only there for like a few more months and then before he took off to WWE because he came in like, what, mid-88 in WWF?
Yeah, I don't remember the time period off the top of my head, so yeah, maybe.
All right, so that, I think that one had legendary referee Dick Worley as well.
Yeah.
According to my notes.
And the other thing, too, you notice, like, which doesn't happen, like the camera, like, at certain times focuses on Precious and she's like yelling at the camera, which is like something you don't see nowadays, right? I mean, nowadays, like, when you do see managers, like when you see them in AEW, they just stand there and they're like useless, right? I mean, like Tully Blanchard does nothing, right? Arn Anderson does nothing. They just stand there.
The art of the manager is dead at this point, it seems like, because Arn Anderson will stand there, but he's got that white piece of paper. That's like his gimmick. He's covering his mouth. And it's like, because so he doesn't want the heels to see what he's talking about. I get it, but you know, it's kind of like, I mean, I love Arn. You know, no, it's not. But you know, Arn's my favorite wrestler of all time, pretty much.
But definitely not your favorite manager. Fuji's a better manager than him at this point, right?
Well, Fuji had the cane at least, so that was broken on numerous occasions.
He had the salt.
And the salt, that's right. I like Fuji wearing when he had the black suit and the cane and the top hat and stuff, or the bowler hat, whatever it's called.
Yeah. Not the Yokozuna version, but the
nah, I didn't really, at that point, I didn't really care for him much anymore. But I mean, bless him, he was able to stay around for another few years with that. So.
Yeah.
So what else we have here, Johnny?
What else happens now? We have Ken Resnick does an ad for a Pro Wrestling Report.
Yep.
Which is really cool. No more paper stuff anymore, right? If you want paper stuff, you have to get the Observer, right? You can't get a WWE or AEW report, right, sent to your house.
Do they even do... I was thinking about this not so long ago, because I'm a magazine collector. I always collect older magazines. WWE does not produce any print media anymore as far as like a magazine, because I know they used to do the WWF and turned into WWE, and then I
think it's not profitable, so they stopped. They only do like special ones for like WrestleMania, I think, and stuff. That's about it now. Yeah.
Okay. I think the only wrestling magazine, at least in the United States these days, is Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Still produces something like 6 issues a year. Mm-hmm. I'll pick that up every now and again to kind of like look through it and just. But it's like by the time I start looking through it, all that information is months old now. It's like with the internet.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's rough, but does the Observer still print paper? I
could request it, it'll still send it to your house, Dave.
I know the Torch actually does too, but like there's like you can sign up for the site or you can sign up for the paper edition. You can't.
Yeah, yep. They got a double dip. They have to get your money both ways, right?
And I wouldn't mind, but I mean it's so easy to do everything on your phone these days.
Yeah.
That magazine though, the AWA Wrestling Report, I've never seen that before. Did you ever see that before?
I mean, I've seen that on eBay for sale a few times. I never actually bought any, but I have seen them for sale. It's easier to find the regular programs,
Yes, I have like some of those wrestling news issues, which some of them are produced. It seems like every area had an wrestling news magazine. Like, I have some from the Vern Gagne's wrestling news, but it's not that magazine like the AWA magazine that we're talking about. Before we move forward with did you know that there was actually a 70s or an NWA magazine in the 70s?
I thought I heard, what's his name? I'm drawing a blank now. The trainer, what's his name? Heartland Wrestling,
who's that?
You know what I'm talking about, Thatcher. Did he run that, or is he behind it, or no?
Thatcher. Okay.
I thought I heard that.
I'm not sure of. I actually have seen. Where was it that I saw it? I think maybe High Spots had one up for auction during one of their virtuals, and it was when they had Terry Funk, perhaps. And because that's the only issue I've ever seen. And then I went on eBay and looked, and I found like a couple issues, but they're not really easy to come by.
Yeah, I never actually read one, so.
No, I can't imagine that they had too. I mean, some of those magazines are just really wacky to look through because I love looking through the old magazines and discovering some that you discover like a lot of wrestlers that from that time period. And it's funny because some of these guys that you and I grew up watching be like preliminary wrestlers, but then they're like really talking about these guys like they're tough. Like, you know, like they're like, for instance, that picture I showed you the other day, Frankie Williams, who got his annihilated by Piper back in the day.
Yeah.
So we went with the LOD was part of Larry Zbyszko's In This Corner, which is supposed to be his no-nonsense talk show. Larry Zbyszko's a great
Before that,
heel.
there's another backstage segment with Jimmy Garvin and Practice.
That's right. You're right. Yep. He's talking about. I think that he still got cheered during that because I think that this backstage area was like off to the side somewhere because you can still hear the crowd.
Yeah, because they're at the Tropicana. I always, for whatever reason, I liked it when they filmed there. So yeah, so it's probably like literally there's like in front of a curtain, so it's probably like right in front of it, you know. Right.
Now, was that part of was that in New Jersey? Or was that in Atlantic
City?
That was. Yeah. How did the AWA? Because, like you said before, like the AWA was not necessarily an East Coast company. Were they just expanding and coming out to Jersey?
I think this is possibly when they started trying to do that whole thing with the Pro Wrestling USA when they started coming.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's when they started doing this around this time period.
What year did that start? Do you remember?
I think 85, I think.
Okay. That didn't last very long. I think now this is funny that we're talking about this. This Pro Wrestling USA might be one of the earliest wrestling things that I've seen, like outside of WWF. Because I remember, I don't know who was wrestling, but growing up, I went back and I was watching a video. And I just remember that setting that they had, and then the red, white, and blue was like the tarps that they had on the side of the ring. And when I was a kid, I just could never, for years, I could not remember what the hell it was called. And then when I went back,
sometimes it looked like the AWA, but it didn't look like the same arena, so it's kind of confusing. And that was on Channel 11 when it was on the East Coast.
There was they use a lot of different guys in there. Like Backlund went in there. I know Lawler didn't. It's funny because I would watch there'd be some Southern guys that came in and
others I told you and he
a young
did
Tracy
the job before he was known, for Pro Wrestling USA, which is essentially just like AWA with a handful of guys from NWA, right? Basically, or whatever.
Yeah, they were trying to form a super fed, and I think that was Crockett was involved, and Vern basically were kind of the heads of it, wasn't it? But then their heads were clashing too much.
Yeah, I don't know what the real story is, but it didn't last very long.
Yeah. All right, so you want to talk about the LOD promo?
What's that?
You want to talk about the LOD promo? Was phenomenal here. These guys are...
Well, first they showed the music video. This song is phenomenal. The lyrics, I think, are so weird. They talk about, I don't know what your feelings were at this time period, but they talk about Eddie and the Cruisers, right?
Okay. I listened to this about 3 to 4 times today, and trying to, what the hell is going on with the Eddie and the Cruisers line?
I don't know. Then they talk about James Dean was alive. I don't think of the Road Warriors like a 50s type band.
No, they were they looked like they were from like Mad Max or something.
Yeah, so why are you making these references? Is this this is the other thing I'm sure you've heard. Vern Gagne doesn't like modern music, so you have to always bring up old music.
Talk in the street, there's trouble coming down. Pop and the Animal are coming to town. Everybody's talking, they don't say a thing. know that the Warriors will win. Eddie and the Cruisers, you know will be there. The Blasters from Chicago, you'll see them everywhere. If James Dean were alive, I know he'd be there. Tonight, there's gonna be a rumble. Tonight, 'cause we're the Warriors. That's right. Gonna be some trouble tonight. 'Cause I'm Hawk. I'm the Animal. That's right. The asphalt jungle's a hot place to be. Warriors are coming. Don't get caught in the streets. 1,000 eyes are watching everywhere. No one can stop us. Nobody dares. Eddie and the Cruisers, you know will be there. The Blasters from Chicago, you'll see them everywhere. If James Dean were alive, I know he'd be there. Tonight, there's gonna be a rumble. Tonight, 'cause we're the Warriors. That's right. There's gonna be some trouble. Tonight, 'cause I'm Hawk. I'm the Animal. That's right.
Did you ever hear that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was old when we were a kid, so what did he listen to? Like fucking Sinatra and stuff?
Yeah, just like 50s, like type,
doo-wop, rockabilly, and stuff like that.
So I wonder if that was like a thing for, all right, I'll let you do it, but it can't be too crazy. You gotta.
Well, I mean, he raps and wrestle rock, though.
He does. Yeah. That was good, but so this video is definitely great. This music video, and then the interview. Right, you like the interview with?
That was just really bizarre. Like the whole interview. It's like Paul Ellering is such a strange character. Like as a manager, like he never was calm. He always just seemed to yell all the time, but like in this really weird voice. It's just.
He's just
and then
throwing
just
paper on the floor while they're talking.
Yes.
And Larry
puts them over.
And Larry, like Rick is like the only other person I've ever met that loves Larry Zbyszko like I do. Like nobody else likes Larry, but except for Rick.
Everybody laughs at Larry. I think everybody laughs at Larry. I think the guy was great. I mean, the Zbyszko stall is one of the greatest things in professional.
Oh, they love it.
Yeah, because it makes the crowd insane because he sits there.
They would really get annoyed. That's why it was awesome.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, he'd go out there for like a good 15, 20 minutes and do it, and then,
that's great.
And then truck out, at least there's not, I mean, what did he do? He didn't do that with the jobbers, obviously, but like in a real match, like he would do that, but he would end up like, just giving a kick and a pile driver, and then it was over.
And also, in the music video was great because you see like Austin Idol and Jerry Lawler footage getting beat up by the Road Warriors, which is cool, and the Fabulous Ones.
And they used a lot of Memphis footage. Like they must have just come from Memphis, and that's why they were using it. They must not have had much AWA footage of them. No,
that one might have been in Minneapolis, the Fabulous Ones footage, but the other one definitely was Memphis, though the Lawler one, right? I mean.
Right.
In Austin, Iowa.
And I've seen those. That was actually probably some of like the earliest Fabulous Ones things that I've ever seen. We got those on those generic VHS tapes that had like Hogan and Savage, and then it was just all like old Memphis footage. It's probably the first time I ever discovered Memphis wrestling in like some dollar store at the time.
Yeah. Oh yes, it was amazing, wasn't it? Was it amazing that had like all that stuff, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's the store. Yes.
Yeah.
Miss things like that.
And then and also they talk about how Larry Zbyszko talks about how he's into wrestling because he cares about money, and the Road Warriors don't care about money. This and Paul cares about money. We just care about beating people up. So this was, I mean, just everybody just stuck to their characters back then, and that was it. It was it's not complicated, right? Nowadays, we don't know what they're doing. They're reading these scripted promos, and you forget about it.
The thing with the scripted promos is it's like nobody talks like that. Like me and you were sitting there having a conversation. Yeah. It's like they're all talking like this technical, like, stuff. It's really out there and outlandish, half the stuff that's going on. Do you think that do you think in real life when like fucking Matt Riddle gets home, like kicks his boots off, he sees birds flying around? Like, it's stupid shit like that. But you go back to this, it's very simple, yet it's way better than anything that's going on today.
And then it ends. This is great. I don't know if you noticed this, Rick. The way this ends, this interview, and this wasn't scripted. Hawk just goes up to Larry and rips off his AWA patch from his jacket. Did you notice that?
No, I did not notice that.
He just rips it up and throws it up. Like, that wasn't planned. He just did that.
He must have been upset. He wouldn't be able to wear that to the basketball game.
He loves his jacket. They're like, yeah, let's... Right.
Poor Larry Nelson. The next segment, I just remember another match coming up after the commercial break. And two of my favorite wrestlers are in this match. I'm talking about Kevin Kelly and Larry Winters.
Wait, don't they play the old Nick Bockwinkel match, correct? Though before this,
they had the right. I'm sorry, I'm out of line because I wrote that somewhere else. They played the match. That's right. Yeah. I wrote that down.
Vern was one of your favorite wrestlers. I was going to say, Rick.
No, I'm sorry. I wrote it down at top when I was writing it when they were announcing it. That's right. Bockwinkel and Vern, and I read this. Now I heard this. Now I was watching. I think. The Cornette interview with Greg Gagne. Okay. It was Back to the Territories. Mm-hmm. Cornette said there was 17,000 fans in this arena for this match, to see this match. And then,
I don't know.
I have a hard time.
There's one of the things I know. He said there's an overflow of like 5,000 people, right, in another theater to watch on. I don't know if it was this event, but I remember him saying about some of these events.
I think that was when he came out of retirement, like 3 years later, 2-3 years later.
Okay.
I think that there was people waiting around the corner. There was like thousands of people. Now, I mean, there's probably a lot of people, but I doubt thousands. I mean, that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, but then again, it wasn't so easy to buy tickets then either. You had to go to the box office, and
you had to call, right? Maybe you can call on a phone too. Maybe back then, I don't even remember because I'm trying to think when my dad bought tickets. Like one time, he actually had to call on the phone and use his credit card.
Yeah, but if you didn't have a credit card, you had to go down to the box office, down to the and they were only open for a few hours a day.
Go down to the box office, and wait,
And now things sell out so quick because people jump online and enter. A lot of these companies, like whatever, Ticketmaster, whatever, probably has your credit card information. You can save it in there for future purchases and stuff. So it's stuff like that.
Oakland commentating, which was
yes. And I got to tell you, like I've watched some of this old AWA stuff where he was commentating on it, and he wasn't very good commentary. Like I'd rather listen to Rod Trongard. Better as an interview and stuff. Because he, when he did the interviews, he was actually able to be witty, and he'll be able to crack a joke or whatever. But like in these interviews, he's too serious. Yeah, it really wasn't that interesting. But even at this time period, Vern looked old even then. So I mean, like, how long was he? He was bald for a very long time.
Yeah, but he does the famous Gagne sleeper. And then,
see, nobody. That's the other thing I wanted to bring up.
Singapore sleeper, apparently.
Right. Nobody does the sleeper anymore. That's a move you will not see ever, and that's kind of upsetting because it's like, it's like that move was so effective back then, and so many people used it, but like now it's just nothing.
The closest thing to would be like the rear naked choke. Would be like the closest thing to a sleeper, right? When like Samoa
I
Joe does
guess.
it, right?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah. Stuff like that, yeah. So we ended up having the, I think that they ended up talking about it. Did they end up interviewing Vern after that?
At the end of the show, they did, if I'm not mistaken,
That's
right?
okay, yeah.
And this also
So
had
they
Bob Heenan as Bockwinkel's, and you could see him. He's like very animated too in this match.
Yes. He was one of the greatest managers, even in the AWA. And I read somewhere recently that Bobby was the only guy, or maybe it was Greg Gagne said it, that Bobby was the only guy that actually filled in his commitments with the AWA.
Yeah, everybody else just left them. They had like 5 shows left. They just left them. I couldn't believe it when Gagne said Jim Brunzell, who was like his best buddy, just left them high and dry to go to WWF. Didn't give him any notice. You figured that's like one guy, like, well, I should kind of hang around. He's like, no. He just left.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, I was surprised to hear him say even Brunzell did that, because Brunzell always seemed like a straightforward dude that they must have been paying. They must have offered him a lot of money in order to jump like that.
Years ago, watching an interview, and he said like the amount of money they gave him was like ridiculous back then, and he couldn't turn it down.
No, that's understandable. I mean, and some of the guys that WWF brought up, I mean, they were brought up any normal-looking guy, like jobber, like guy, or whatever you want to call him. And they just paid him outlandish money from the territories. They could be like, somebody that's like a regional star, and then they'd just be like a mid-carder there. No offense to the guys like Blair and Brunzell, but they weren't necessarily like a gigantic team over there. They didn't make like a huge impact in WWF. I enjoyed them, but they didn't get a title run.
Maybe they didn't do more with them, actually, because they seem pretty over,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seemed like they did a lot of jobs while they were there, just, But then at that time period, you got to remember that WWF was flooded with tag teams. You guys had the Rougeaus coming in like 86 as well. There was the Dream Team. Yeah, there was just a lot of Santana and Martel, or Martel and Zank. Anyways.
So now your favorite match is coming up with...
now my favorite match. Kevin Kelly and Larry Winters, the legendary Larry Winters.
Yeah.
Took on the Long Riders. They did I thought this actually did not
the best match of the show, in my opinion. I don't know what your opinion is, but I thought it was probably the best one.
I think the Long Riders took this one, right?
I like
What's
Larry.
That?
I think wrestler Larry Winters.
Yeah, no, I thought he was good. I just remember as a kid him getting the shit kicked out of him by Larry Zbyszko. And then I remember him having like an early ECW stint, like in the earliest days of ECW.
Heel, like in the early days of when it was Eastern Championship Wrestling, which I was like, this is like random. And anyone who's not familiar with Kevin Kelly, he later became very famous as Nails.
Tried to kill Vince McMahon, didn't he? Tried to choke him out.
He said Vince grabbed his genitalia. If you remember that story too, do you remember that, Rick?
That part I didn't hear. That part I didn't hear. I just heard that he. I highly doubt that for some reason.
But this was good, and this was. They have. Oh, here's another question. They call this an Australian rules match.
Yes, that a lot of places did that. That it was an Australian tag team match. Because I don't know if it was necessarily created in Australia. The Fabulous Kangaroos kind of popularized tag team wrestling, and that's where the Australian thing came in from.
Right.
It's like they'd always. I guess like it was just always referred to as an Australian tag team match. Like it was something that was done in Australia. I don't know how true it is that it was like created in Australia, but it's basically a standard tag team match. It's just
it was. I'm like, okay, what am I missing? Because I know I heard that term and I kind of like forgot about it until watching this. I'm like, all right.
No, and I'm surprised that the AWA was actually using that term that late, because it's something that was really faded out at that time period. Like, I think they might be the only company that were still using that term. I don't think NWA and WWF used it.
Another thing that I thought was good, which is like, there's nobody pays attention to any details and to make wrestling seem realistic anymore, is how Nick Bockwinkel mentions the boots of the Long Riders and, like, should they be outlawed because they're biker boots?
Right. They Larry Nelson interviews them and asks them why don't they wear regular gear.
Yeah. Later on, they say because the Road Warriors wear steel toe boots.
Right.
I to that. But this match I thought was good. I mean, you actually saw good wrestling. Like, you see a gut wrench suplex. You don't see that anymore, do you, Rick? I mean, do you see that?
You don't really see too often now. That's when you don't see. And
another heel move, where they drop the guy's throat on the ropes, was like a classic.
That was a good one too. Yeah, because you never see that anymore. Like, it's just certain things. Like, and Vern, was very. You had to have legitimate. A lot of his guys had to have legitimate wrestling credentials if you wanted to be a star there. Obviously, there's certain guys like the Road Warriors. I don't know how legitimate as far as like amateur credentials, but it's like I forgot where I was going with this. But it's like, yeah, you just have like this whole like traditional sense in this AWA presentation that's just. A lot of this is not done anymore. Even WWF at the time period was getting away from a lot of this stuff as well. This old school type thing, like the dropping of the ropes. You didn't see many people doing that at that time period.
And they were the Super Destroyers right before this.
Yeah.
AWA.
Yep.
Because they also do. Now, didn't they, one of the Irwins, create the Superplex supposedly?
Yeah, I've heard that before. I'm not entirely certain.
True, but,
I think the first person I ever saw do it was Bob Orton.
If you, I don't know if you saw that.
Actually, the first person I think I ever saw use that move was Bob Orton Jr. But then then obviously the Dynamite Kid did it like right from the top rope, which looked way more deadly and dangerous. So, what was in between this, other than there was a promo afterwards? Larry Nelson interviewed them.
Where Larry Nelson talks to them, and that's where they're talking about. He's asking them about the boots, and that's what they brought up about the Road Warriors boots. Which, again, like little details, they don't do. Do they check the wrestlers anymore, Rick, to see if they have anything hidden?
No, and that's a problem. The only company that I ever see do that now is the NWA, and especially for like main events. Okay. And I think that that's something that like Corgan is doing just to put an emphasis on the old school, like in the presentation. Because these guys just come in the ring, the music stops, and then they're just like they just ring the bell. If they even, it's just they always check to make sure there's no weapons and stuff like that. Or roll the quarters. Obviously, Larry Zbyszko's outside the ring and going to hand it off. Stuff like that. It doesn't happen anymore, and that's a part of wrestling. That's, that was a part that made it like look more legitimate to me.
Yeah, I agree.
And it was more fun to think about. It's like like I said, again, it was created more sport oriented and
when I was a kid, when they did all these little things, I thought everything was legitimate. So I didn't question, like, oh, okay, this makes sense as they're checking to see if they have any weapons on them,
Right.
They're mentioning the boots. So, like, gee, why should they have, they shouldn't do this. Little things like that,
But now, like, now you could see why that was so important. You know what I mean? And it seems so little to some people like that are watching wrestling these days. But back then, some people get bored watching this old stuff. You know what I mean? Sometimes my wife will ask me, why are you watching all this old stuff? I was like,
it's funny because I put on WrestleMania 9, and my wife's actually not complaining. She goes, I don't like it, but I can tolerate this compared to the wrestling nowadays.
Yeah, my wife, I think the only thing that she'll really tolerate nowadays is like either when I put on Ring of Honor, or NWA, or New Japan. Yeah. It's like if it's WWE, she appreciated NXT for a while too because it seemed like it was more wrestling wise than all the bullshit.
Yeah.
But now it's, it's like even that's gotten ridiculous. So, I just remember sitting there one night and it was Okada and Ospreay, and then, all of a sudden the crowd it's the first time I'd ever seen her look up from, and be like, what the hell is going on here? Because she's heard the crowd going nuts during that match, stuff like that gets the people interested. So it's like, but we'll sit there and like watch old documentaries on like wrestling. Like I'm sure we're going to watch a Savage one after this. So it's amazing to think about. It's like little things that are very important to make people that don't watch it turn their heads and say, this is better than the shit that's going on today.
Yeah.
And then the main event, I think that this was a great main event.
This is a very good main event for the time, because you don't usually see a match of this caliber back then. 2 stars like this on free TV.
My favorite part of this match was when
it's Rick Martel. It's champion Rick Martel versus Freebird Terry Gordy.
Yeah, and then the cable goes out while he's got him in a headlock. Did you notice this on this particular?
Yeah, if you want to watch this on YouTube, you have to search AWA 9385, and you'll watch it. And during this match, someone's had an issue with their VHS tape. We can scramble for a little while, but not for too long.
But the thing with this is, like, you didn't get to see a lot of like world championship matches on television at this time period.
And that's the big deal at the time. And Terry Gordy was one of the best wrestlers at the time too, so it was.
Yeah, and this was actually. Do you see how technical Terry Gordy is in this match? It's not necessarily going out there like a gigantic brawl, like he would be like when the Freebirds were saying like world class or whatever. This was actually
the way they set this up, where they had Michael Hayes and Buddy Roberts go to the back, so it's just a straight wrestling match, And I'm sure you agree with me, Rick. I think Rick Martel's one of the most underrated wrestlers, like most underappreciated wrestlers.
I think we've talked about that before. It's just that his WWF career was a little bit way different than this. Like, he was very underrated as a world champion in the AWA. I think they were trying to put it on a solid baby face, but I mean, look who had been holding the title. Vern Gagne held it for like 50 years or whatever, and Nick Bockwinkel held it for how long? It's like you had like these older gentlemen that.
This was Nick Bockwinkel's idea to have Rick Martel. He's the one who pushed for him to be the champion.
Right, and he, I think that Bockwinkel beat him for the title. Is that correct? A little bit later on.
I'm trying to think. They wrestled with Jumbo Saruda. I'm trying to think of all the matches at the time, probably.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it was, and it wasn't it wasn't Wrestle Rock, was it? For 86 or no? Am I mistaken? I don't remember exactly.
He was gone.
He was gone that far? All right. I'm trying to remember when he went back to WWF. So I know it was he was definitely in there.
And then Hansen.
That's right. I'm sorry. We can listen to Hansen.
No, well, it gets confusing.
Yeah, it does. I can't even believe I forgot it, because now I remember. He lost it to Hansen, and Hansen refused to do the job. I think for Bockwinkel, right? Yeah. And then, that's right. All right. I just totally got confused and got the whole story wrong, but that's all right. But this is actually a very good match, and I think that Rick Martel, on top of, like you said, being one of the most underrated wrestlers ever, he's got one of the most underrated drop kicks as well, if you see the way he delivers it in this match.
And I think this match is great the way it ends. Like, and this is another thing, you don't see baby faces like this anymore. Because he's a small, I mean, he's not small compared to Terry Gordy. Terry Gordy's huge.
Right. Yep.
He does a whole flurry of drop kicks. It wasn't just one drop kick. He does a bunch in a row. So like, okay, this is realistic, where this guy that's smaller than him does a bunch to knock him off his feet,
Right. Yep. He just has like a really great moveset, and it doesn't seem to really go for that long, maybe 10 minutes or whatever. But he still seemed like it was just like they had this like brutal match.
It was very even, and it was very even. Then it ended with the drop kicks and a suplex, and then right when he went to pin him, this is another thing you don't see as much, and then just the time limit expired.
Yeah. Well, they were also like, did you watch the post-match interviews?
Yeah, see, now this is the thing. I think it's missing because now they said Michael Hayes and Buddy Roberts came in after that and attacked, correct? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're going to say?
Because I was confused because I'm just like, I just watched them.
That's what I think happened.
Okay, because I was very confused with that, and I was like, I don't recall seeing that. It either got cut out or, AWA just didn't show.
I think that was like the setup to having to have a match, and then once the match was officially over, then they came to beat the crap out of Martel, because then Martel mentioned that. Yeah, I just had to put two and two together for that.
And Martel cuts a pretty good promo at the end. I mean, surprisingly, because he's got such a heavy accent, he didn't get to talk a lot while he was in WWF. But here, AWA didn't care, and it's actually a pretty decent promo. It's just the accent's a little thick to find your way through, but it's good.
And then you have Larry Nelson talking to Vern Gagne.
My favorite.
Mr. Personality Gagne.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he brings up too. I was uncalled for the Freebirds to come out and attack Martel. He brings that up.
So they talk about basically maybe another match coming up or something to that effect is what they hint at. I don't know if it ever happened or not, but we'll have to look that up and discuss that in the future.
Yeah. Look and see what other episodes after this one if it's available. But I thought this was really just a solid, episode. What's your opinion?
I thought it was really good because, at that time period, I was not 100% familiar with the AWA. It wasn't until later, and then, I grew up and then went backwards and watched a bunch of AWA and stuff like that, and then whatever the current product was at the time. So going back to this, it was just really fun, and this was what really, like a really good wrestling program should be. It was presented very well. And at this time period, WWF was expanding and cherry-picking all the freaking biggest names out of the territory. And this is probably maybe the final great year of the AWA, maybe. They might have another year left where they start losing all the big stars.
86 maybe, right? It's still pretty good in 86, and then you could kind of tell little by little it was like slowly they were losing people,
I mean, I think that 87 and 88 still has some pretty good stuff in it. Even 89, even though it's like, I think you can definitely see the writing on the wall in 1989, but they managed to last almost another 2 years. You can definitely see the writing. But I think 88 was, ends up being, you go back and there's certain guys that you just don't remember being in the AWA, or certain guys that you just forgot about growing up watching. Earthquake Ferris is one of the guys that I came across today. I mean, do you remember him at all?
Yes, I do. Forgot all about it. But
apparently he got a big push for a little while, according to the article I read, of course, but that could be that doesn't mean much. All right, John, is there anything that you would like to plug?
No, I do have one, because all my other figures are getting graded now, because I know you were talking about the figures. I do have one set.
Oh, wow.
Just to show you, just so people...
Now, is that a pin up there in the right corner?
This is like a little... It's like a little plastic. They call it AWA Souvenir, is what they call it. But yeah, it's a little tiny... It's got like a little plastic clip. But it's not even a real pin. It's got a little clip that you have to put into like a pocket or something.
All right.
Yeah.
I should have one of those for my work shirt or something.
Yeah.
Show up at the office with that.
The other thing to plug is just a friend of mine started a group on Facebook called Title on the Line. It's just all about great title matches in professional wrestling. Just every tag team, world title, what have you. If you want to check that out. That's about it.
I've been there before. I've posted some stuff in there that random things that I've, was watching and stuff. And it's a really fun group.
You totally forgot about it. You're like, I never even knew this match happened,
Right. All right. Well, I guess that's it. Make sure you check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We got more coming up later in the week. Have fun, everybody.